I never told my mom what I hid in the secret warehouse my dad left me. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I knew someone else would eventually be listening. Dad used to say, "Some doors aren't meant to be locked. They're meant to be protected." I didn't understand that until after the funeral, until the lawyer slid the envelope across the table and said, "Your father left you one last responsibility." The warehouse wasn't on any map. No sign, no records in Mom's name. Just a rusted building tucked behind a row of abandoned rail tracks, paid for in cash years ago. Inside, inventory logs, sealed crates, documents, and proof of who my father really was. Mom remarried less than a year later. His name was Rick. He smiled too much, asked too many questions, and from the first handshake, I felt it. The weight of his fingers, like he was already counting what he thought was his. I was stationed on base when Mom called one night, whispering like the walls could hear. "Rick says your dad left something big. He says we should look into it." That's when I knew. I kept my voice calm. Dad handled his affairs. There's nothing else. Rick didn't believe me. Gold diggers never do. Over the next few months, he dropped hints, asked about storage units, old businesses, keys. Once, I caught him rifling through Dad's old desk. When I confronted him, he laughed. "Just curious," he said. "A man like your father doesn't die empty-handed." He was right. He was looking in the wrong place. Then, one afternoon, while I was on base, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. "Ma'am?" The voice trembled. "This is the warehouse manager. I didn't know who else to call." My stomach tightened. "What's wrong?" There was a pause. Then, "Your stepdad's here, with bolt cutters. He says he owns this place now." I closed my eyes. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Because this moment, I'd been waiting for it. I told the manager to do exactly what we'd discussed months earlier. "Don't stop him," I said, "and turn on the cameras." Rick thought he was clever. He'd convinced Mom that the warehouse was part of their future, that whatever was inside belonged to them. He never noticed the small detail Dad buried deep in the paperwork. The warehouse wasn't an inheritance, it was a trust, and I was the only beneficiary and executor. Rick snapped the lock like it was nothing, walked inside like a king reclaiming stolen land. He didn't notice the red light blinking above the door, didn't notice the alarm wasn't for police, it was for documentation. By the time he forced open the first crate, he was already finished. Inside weren't piles of cash or gold bars like he imagined. Inside were records, years of them. Dad hadn't just owned businesses, he'd invested in companies that later collapsed under fraud investigations, companies Rick had worked for, companies that quietly disappeared while Rick walked away clean. Until now. The warehouse held proof of embezzlement, shell accounts, falsified signatures, all traced back to Rick. Dad had kept it all, not to use, not to threaten, to protect us. Rick realized it too late. The cameras caught everything, his face draining of color, his hands shaking as he flipped through documents with his own name stamped everywhere. That's when I made my call, not to Mom, to the attorney. By the time Rick heard the sirens, he was on his knees screaming that it was a misunderstanding, that he was set up. But here's the twist he never saw coming. Dad had already turned copies over to a federal auditor years ago. All I did was unlock the timing. Rick was arrested that night. Mom didn't speak to me for weeks. When she finally did, her voice was hollow. "He said you ruined his life." I didn't raise my voice. "I saved yours." The truth came out slowly. Court dates, headlines, former co-workers stepping forward. The gold digger everyone thought was charming turned out to be a professional parasite who'd been feeding off people for decades. The warehouse was sealed again, this time for good. Mom sold the house, moved closer to her sister, started over, quieter, wiser. One day she asked me, "Why didn't you ever tell me?" I told her the truth. "Because Dad trusted me to protect you, even from yourself." She cried, then she nodded. I eventually donated most of what was inside the warehouse: historical records, legal evidence, and assets Dad had legally reclaimed, to the very institutions Rick once tried to bleed dry. As for the key, I still have it, not because I need it, but because some inheritances aren't meant to be opened again. They're meant to remind you that patience is the sharpest weapon of all. And revenge? Sometimes it's not loud. Sometimes it waits.